Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. And well, we'll have a place for that. We have something that happened previously we'll share with you a little later. But I'm Karren Henderson, as you know, or for some of you who don't, here on Thursdays with Karen's Carrots. And we're all about EAs in the C-suite here, what we can do to enhance their performance, their lifestyle, their mindset in the very let's say, high pressure and high stress positions that they hold, supporting those positions with CEO, CIO, CFO, so forth and so on. And we have a very special guest here tonight. I'm thankful she's busy. And when you hear a little of her background, you'll know how busy she is and how blessed I am to have her here with us. I want to welcome Wendy Vance tonight. She's here with a plethora of information to share, but you'll also benefit from hearing. As you know, my business, EAs in the C-suite, it really focuses in on emotional intelligence and the importance of that. You'll sometimes hear soft skills, and the importance of strengthening your emotional intelligence. And I'm going to let Wendy tell us all about that. But let me just say, Wendy Vance comes to us with a background that is quite impressive. 20-year career in the area of student support. She's a professor. She's a coach. And I'm just going to stop there because really I could go on and on. But thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Karren, for having me tonight. And I'm really excited to be here. I want to say hello to your audience. And I just can't wait to share this topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I would say is one of the key things to emotional intelligence, which is cultivating a growth mindset. And so, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to dive in.
Well, can I just say, I was ready ever since I saw the topic.
Seriously.
Okay. Cultivating a growth mindset. I mean, that's pretty powerful. It says a lot. I know you're going to break it down. I'm going to let you do that. But folks, you are in for a treat.
Okay, so let's go. So the first thing is that I want to define what is a mindset, okay, so that all of us are on the same page and we all know what we're talking about. So a mindset is just a set of beliefs, or it's a way that you might think, and it determines several things. It determines your behavior, it can determine your mental attitude, as well as your outlook on life. Okay. And, so the next thing is, okay, where do mindsets come from? And they come from a lot of different places. They can come from the media, okay, TV. They can come from friends, from family, from, things out in society that tell you, well, this is who you are, this is what you are. So those are some of the ways that mindsets can come at you. And if we want to just break it down real simple, it really comes down to just two types of mindsets. There is a fixed mindset, and then there is the growth mindset. Okay. So I'm going to, start with the fixed mindset first, and talk a little bit about that, and then we'll move into the growth mindset, and as well as how you can grow or cultivate it. I like to think of that as like, how do you water that plant and cultivate that growth mindset? And it is a process. But let's start out with that fixed mindset. So the fixed mindset is going to be something, and look, in the mindset area, we may have a fixed mindset in different things. Just because you have a fixed mindset does not mean you have a fixed mindset with everything. It may just show up at work, and your growth mindset shows up in your personal life. So we'll talk a little bit about, what you can do as you think about where does your fixed mindset show up in your life. But if you have a fixed mindset, there's going to be a couple characteristics. Usually, you're going to believe that either you have it or you don't. So usually you're going to think that, if you have a talent, then that's great. And if you don't have that talent or you don't have that skill or ability, then you're just out of luck. When you think like that, this either I have what it takes or I don't have what it takes, you can get caught up in judging. And you can get caught up in a lot of self-criticism, especially if you feel that you don't have it. All right. You can really be hard on yourself. Well, I don't have this and that, and you go down that negative thinking, and that kind of keeps you stuck in that fixed mindset. There's a couple other things that will show up with this fixed mindset. Usually you will want to look smart to other people. And when you want to look smart, usually that means you're going to avoid challenges because you don't want anybody to know you're not smart. So you will stay back from challenges. You will tend to give up easily. You will also ignore negative feedback. So if you get feedback, say from your boss, from your CEO, you get some negative feedback, in the fixed mindset, you're really not going to want to hear it. You're not going to want to hear it. You're not going to want to take it in. And you're going to feel really threatened by that negative feedback. All right. So because of these things, this holding back, this not wanting to hear criticism, this not wanting to, stick with or persist in something because you don't want to be seen as, oh, I don't know this, that can hold you back from achieving your full potential in life.
Let me just make a comment on that, because what I thought about is sometimes in the workplace you aren't given credit. You're accepted, you're doing an okay job and everything's fine, but because you aren't given credit in certain areas or promoted, acknowledged for your contribution, you begin to internalize,
Yeah.
But by the same token, if that situation were reversed, it could help that internalization reverse itself. Would you
Yes,
agree?
I would agree. And like you're saying, you can have this internal dialogue going in your head, and it doesn't mean that, like you're saying, that it's wrong. It could be very true that you're not getting promoted or you're not getting, you know, uh, the contributions you're making are not being accepted or promoted. Those things could be true. However, by staying in the fixed mindset and really ruminating on everything that's going wrong and everything where you feel like you can't control that, that's not going to move you into the growth mindset. But also by moving you into that growth mindset, there will be other opportunities that may open up, or other things that you may need to do to speak up for yourself or collaborate.
Exactly.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, because
Exactly.
that's going to come into, that how do I cultivate this? And so I'm going to give some tips on that. But that's a
That's,
great example. Yeah.
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 Um, Yeah, well, I'll wait until you get to
Yes.
that point, because I was
Yes.
going to elaborate
Oh
on
yeah.
that even
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So many things. That's why that word cultivate, because that cultivation can come, and this is helping the individual. Let's say the mind is fixed, but it may be opening to
Mm-hmm.
change or opening to
Yes.
different possibilities in your
Yes.
life. And
Yes.
that could come by way of evaluations. And I know we're going to get into that. But
Mm-hmm.
it also can come by way of coaching.
Yeah.
It could come by way of getting in different groups where the whole
Mm-hmm.
purpose is about empowering.
Sure.
Talk about
Sure.
that.
Sure. So that's actually, and I'm going to kind of get into some of the things that you're kind of mentioning. So let's kind of move into, because we're kind of there. Let's get
There,
into
yeah.
that, to the growth mindset, and what that is, and how we can now move from this fix that you're saying, which can really make us feel stuck, okay,
Yes.
and move us over into that cultivation. So a growth mindset is, number one, first thing that I like that pops in my mind is you're curious. Okay. So a
Absolutely.
growth mindset is someone who is curious. They're focused on learning because they know that through learning they can grow. And if they invest enough effort in something, that they will hopefully, by putting forth persistence and putting the effort in, you will see results from that. So generally, a growth mindset person is going to have a very strong desire to learn. And because of that strong desire, they will tend to embrace challenges. They're not going to necessarily shy away like a fixed mindset. They're going to embrace the challenges, and they're going to persist because, look, life is full of setbacks, and having that growth mindset helps you to persist in the face of those setbacks, because you know that through setbacks, you often learn the greatest lessons of your life through a setback. Okay. And also in terms of looking at the success of others, instead of being jealous, someone who has a growth mindset, and kind of what you said, will want to collaborate with others that they see are successful, as well as admire those people, and use them almost as teachers to say, well, hey, let me really look and see, wow, this person really has it going on. Let me figure out how I can incorporate that into what I'm doing. So those are some of the ways that someone with a growth mindset will look at life, will look at the challenges, will look at experiences, and putting those all together will usually achieve even higher, you know, will reach higher heights of achievement than usually probably what they would ever have thought of, because they're doing those things like being open, to possibilities, to learning, to working hard, to persisting in the face of struggle, to collaborating, working with others, so that where someone else may have a strength that you don't have, you can work with each other. So it's a very different, as you can see, it's a very different mindset, that is really on the opposite end of that fixed mindset. Now, I have in the comments, for anybody who wants to check out. Hey, okay, they hear me talking about these two mindsets, and you might be wondering, well, where do I land? Well, this is a very brief assessment. Feel free to go on it at your leisure. It is very short, which I love. It's short and sweet. There are only 8 questions. And what I love about it, not only will it tell you at the end of answering these questions where your mindset is it fixed or is it growth, but it will also give you some action plans of how to move to a more growth mindset. And that's the part that I love. Give me some things that will help me to move closer to that growth mindset, and that this brief quiz that I have in the comments will put you on that path. So let's kind of get into how you can cultivate this growth mindset. And I think you had mentioned a little bit earlier, and I like to call it self-reflection. And that is the piece that's number one. That's where you start. You start with yourself. And you start in self-reflection, and it can be however you're comfortable with. Some people like to journal. Some people will just like to think about it. Some people may want to ask friends or family and get feedback from others, but you want to take time to think about what areas of my life do I tend towards a fixed mindset, meaning either I have it or I don't. And what areas of your life do you tend towards a growth mindset? So again, it can show up differently in different areas of your life. You know, maybe in your personal life or your hobbies, you have a growth mindset, but maybe in your work life, you can tend to go more towards the fixed mindset. So that's where that self-reflection comes in, where you just take some time and think about where are those areas it's showing up for me. Where is that fixed mindset showing up for me? And it will be unique and different for everybody. Everyone will have a different way they interact with the fixed mindset. Okay. So, yeah.
I just wanted to mention, because you took me back, way back.
Okay.
Because I recall a situation at work where we had a receptionist, and she had been with us a while, and I thought, for the time she had been there, you learn a lot being a receptionist, because you're front line and everyone pretty much deals with you upon entry. And she, had the right personality, doing great. And so one day I had a discussion with her about moving on, because she had excelled in that role, and she had done well. And I thought perhaps she wanted to move on to something more, to grow, to challenge her. And she flat out said no. And I was stunned, because I'm telling you, it was early enough for me not to understand people not wanting to grow. And I tried to coax her. I mean, this is something good for you. It's not something that isn't good. But she said, I don't want any more responsibility. And that's what you reminded me of. Fixed and not moving. So that's what I wanted to say.
And I think, look, that is a perfect example for our listeners of, and is the acknowledgement of everyone is on their own path and how they want to interact with this. And like you're saying in that example, this person was very skilled, very talented in what she was doing, but in that fixed mindset was not open to challenges or any additional obstacles that might have come her way if she had moved on. So that's a wonderful example of someone who decides, I want to stay in the fixed mindset. And what I would like to add to that is, and this is also something I teach to my students, is that comfort zone. Yes. And the fixed mindset is almost like you are in this comfort zone. And, we all have at home our favorite chair that we just, at the end of a long day, we get in that chair and it just feels so good and feels so relaxing. And I like to think of that as the comfort zone. Okay. And look, there's nothing wrong with the comfort zone. Like I said, it feels comfortable. All right. But many times that fixed mindset is kind of the same way, where you get used to thinking a certain way, and it can become too comfortable. All right. And it's only when you get up out of that seat and decide, what's it going to feel like to sit in this chair, that then you might have a different experience. And that's moving out of your comfort zone, which again, it can be scary because it's the unknown. But as we move out of that fixed mindset into the unknown, that's when a lot of wonderful things open up in our lives. And so yeah, that example is truly illustrative of that fixed mindset. Definitely. So looking at this, kind of staying with this growth mindset a little bit more, I'd like to give your listeners just 4 basic steps that everybody can use, and they're really easy. I already talked about the first one, and the first one is self-reflection. And in that self-reflection, you want to start to train your mind to hear when you have that fixed mindset voice running in your head that I don't have what it takes. I'm too old. I can't learn this. I can't do this. That's the fixed mindset voice. A lot of times it will say, I can't, or I don't have what it takes. You want to start hearing that voice running its tape in your mind. And then the next step 2, is just realizing you have a choice. You do not have to let that tape keep running. You can stop it in its track. So you have a choice. So first, recognize that voice, realize you have a choice. And then the third part is start to talk back to it with a growth mindset. And I'm going to get into that in a second. And the last piece is then you're going to take growth mindset action. All right. So how do you start to talk back to this fixed mindset? And the way I like to look at it is in the form of questions. All right. So another way to illustrate this is to think of 2 paths. All right. So you're traveling along on a road and there's 2 ways you can go. The fixed mindset is the judger path. Okay. Because as I mentioned earlier, you can do a lot of self-criticism when you're in, that fixed mindset of saying all the things that you don't have what it takes and you can't do. So that's a lot of judging. The growth mindset is the learner path, because usually when you are on that growth mindset, you're open to learning and open to growing. So as you have these 2 paths in front of you, you want to ask yourself some questions. So when you find yourself on that path, on the judger path and the fixed mindset path, ask yourself these 6 questions. The first one, what can I learn? Where can I grow? What am I needing? And the next one is interesting. If you're working with someone else, what is the other person needing? What is possible? And then this last one is my favorite. What strengths can I leverage? So when you find yourself in that fixed mindset, that judger path, those are the questions you're going to ask. I'll say them real quickly for the second time. What can I learn? Where can I grow? What am I needing? What is the other person needing? What is possible? And what strengths can I leverage? I guarantee you, if you ask yourself and run those 6 questions through your mind, that's going to move you out of that fixed mindset of judgment and criticism and feeling that you don't have what it takes, to the growth mindset of now strategizing, because all of those questions are solution focused. Strategizing, okay, what can I now do? What strengths can I leverage? What do I need in this experience, in this relationship, in this situation? So as you ask yourself those growth mindset questions, that will put you on that learner path. And another thing that I want to add that is also really quick, it's a teeny tiny word. It only has 3 letters, but it's very powerful. And I'll kind of use it in the example with the EA. So say you are an EA and you are in a new position, and there is a software that you are not familiar with. Instead of running that tape, that fixed mindset of, oh, I'll never get this, I'll never understand how to do this, add this little word yet. I don't understand this software yet. I don't
Yet is
understand
that key
this
word. Yes.
software yet.
Yet.
So yet, okay, you may not know the software right this second, but adding that yet means you will know that software maybe tomorrow, next week, next year, next month, and you will do what it takes to learn. So that yet is a little word, but it's very powerful. And it moves you from fixed mindset, I don't know how to do this, to I don't know how to do this yet.
Yet. The power of yet is how they say that.
Yes.
You know, I like to stick in there too, and I know this is, you agree with this. Just be optimistic through the process.
Yes.
You know, be optimistic, and this is important, and it's happened to me a lot of times, and that is to look at failure as a learning opportunity. I have felt the actual leap of growth from a failure.
Yes. Yeah. And there's actually, that brings to mind, there's a video, I believe it's on YouTube, called, and some of the listeners may know, Famous Failures. And it has all of those famous people that we think had instant talent. But the reality is it took a lot of hard work, persistence, growth mindset, like you're saying, optimism, optimistic thinking to get to where they are. And we just see the end result and we think, oh, they had it easy. No, they had a growth mindset and they kept at it. They kept working hard and they had that, like you're saying, that optimistic outlook.
As they say, a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, I love, yes, exactly. And so, look, I would love to just, remind everybody out there that your mindset can change. It is not something static. Mindsets can change. You can change your mindset. And, the last thing, because I talked, and reiterated those growth questions, is remember that if you change your questions, you can change your life.
And sometimes we back off of those questions that would perhaps take us to the next level simply by asking the question. Let's check the chat and see if we have any questions there. I don't. Oh, excuse me. I'd asked for questions, but I don't see any yet. But I always say this every Thursday. Sometimes I get so caught up in our conversation with my guests that I don't see anything in the chat until the end. So I just try to say hello. Thank you for being here. But I also want to talk about the evaluations, the assessments, and how important that is. Because one of the things it does in terms of assessing where you are, pointing out your strengths, it gives you indicators of where you need to work perhaps, or where you need help, or what you need to strengthen. And I really try to be careful in how I term it here, because It's not weak, strong, good, bad.
Yes, right.
It's building upon. But I really, really try to be careful with the words because words have power. And
Yes,
when we're focusing on our growth, that's a fragile state.
it is.
So we want to strengthen, we're working to strengthen, but it's baby steps,
It
perhaps.
is, and
You know?
it's a journey. It's
Yes.
really a journey, and you know, when you think of a journey, there's no rush in it. There's no, you're not trying to get from point A to point B in 60 seconds, because when you take it as it is for the journey, that means you're taking the time to be in the present moment and to accept where you are in that moment. And I think that when you do that, that opens up even more possibilities and potential. And so yes, a lot of times, there's a lot of assessments out there. There's free assessments online that people can take. Not all of them are going to be scientifically backed assessments, so you do want to kind of be careful taking things with a grain of, take some things with a grain of salt. And sometimes it's almost, when you do take an assessment and you get this answer that, okay, this is what you are, or this is what it's saying, your strengths or your weaknesses, it's almost like take it for the questions that come up for you. Now, sometimes an assessment might say something and you might say, I like to use the phrase, that's interesting.
Hmm.
And then that leads you to the self-reflection. Is that really me? Does that fit me? Do I agree with this? So it's almost like when you get that feedback, that's interesting.
Very good
Yeah.
point. Because
Yeah.
back to that fragile state, you may take what something says as the gospel, as they
Yeah, exact.
say.
Right. Right. And taking something again as the gospel, honestly, could put you more in the fixed mindset bucket. Because if it's saying, well, you have a strength in this and you have a weakness in that, that's more of the fixed mindset, which is saying, okay, I have this, but I don't have that. So you can look at it again with that phrase, okay, that's interesting, and play around with it and think about it. Because
Mm.
the growth mindset would say, okay, well, it's saying I have these weaknesses. All right, well, all right, I can decide if I want to learn, grow, develop, study, take more classes, work with a coach, work with a mentor. I can decide whether I want to improve them. Because generally, with a growth mindset, you're open to understanding that any ability that you may not have, or it may not be strong, you can grow it. You can grow it with enough work, attention, persistence. You can get there.
That's I think of the quote I've seen. I may have even used it in my own posting, and that is, your IQ may get you in the door, but your EQ, being emotional intelligence, will give you longevity.
It will. Yes.
So you
Yeah.
can get in that door
Yeah.
because you're brilliant, but how well do you work with people? Are you a good team player? Do you have empathy? Is your mind fixed and not
Exactly.
open to what the other people around you. I mean, it's only going to go so far that your brilliance is valuable to
Right.
us, but it
Right.
begins to lose its value if you're not getting along in the workplace, for instance.
Exactly. And as an EA, it is extremely important for you to have that emotional intelligence because you really need to know, you know, not only what your boss, your CEO, for example, needs, you also have to know the other departments. You have to have working relationships with all of the other people that you need to, again, you mentioned that teamwork, that collaboration to get things done for the CEO.
Yes,
You have
yes.
to be able to have the communication skills, like you mentioned, the teamwork, that those areas of emotional intelligence, and that growth mindset to succeed and to be, someone that is set apart as an EA, as a great EA.
Well, in corporate America, I don't know what areas to say this happened more than others, but they have begun more so on that executives level of doing the assessments. Okay, and the assessments are for various reasons. Of course, they want to see if that CEO, that executive they're hiring, um, basically is equipped not
Mm-hmm.
only as far as credentials are concerned, but are they equipped to carry out our mission? What is the likelihood? So they do those pretty
Yes,
in depth assessments,
they
okay?
do.
And so in some of them, they have begun doing those assessments on the executive assistant,
Mm-hmm.
which is absolutely crucial. However, that's secondary. And perhaps in
Yes.
more progressive companies, it happens more so than others. And I was watching, I don't know, it may have been a podcast where let's say you're the exec, you're just coming into this job, it's this high powered job, and you definitely need your right and left hand, which they call an executive assistant, but which I know is a strategic partner.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, you're in a hurry for that support. But me knowing you and how important it is to get you a person who is not only adept at doing things technically, but also have communication skills, orally and written, off the cuff, can know how to get things when there's no desk reference there,
Yes.
telling them how to do it. And
Yes.
and she was saying that depending on how anxious the executive is to have that support, depended on whether or not they could take their time and do the assessments to determine the best fit. I went all the way around the block to say
Mm-hmm.
what, in my view, a necessary practice, policy, process to do to put two people who have all of the makings of a good fit together.
Yes, that's
Because
very interesting.
yeah, that
Yeah.
position,
Yes.
someone running a
Yes.
company.
Yes. There has to be a synergy, um, between, like you're saying, that CEO and the EA. There has to be it's like it is a team,
Absolutely.
it's like a well-oiled machine. And that requires a high level of, intuitiveness, skill, um, relationship. So yeah, it definitely does, and that's very interesting. That, um, and I can definitely see that there would be value in having those EAs have that assessment for the EAs, so that then they're seeing these strengths, and the CEO knows that knows his or her strengths, and you can kind of really work again as this team of that balance of, okay, I know I can depend on you to handle this. I don't have to worry about this.
And it's also important from the standpoint that job in and of itself, being responsible for an entire corporation, is stressful.
It is.
However, I dare say the higher your emotional intelligence, the less stressful it will be. It's stressful
Yeah.
by nature.
Yeah. Stressful by
But
nature.
yes, but
Yes.
if you are equipped coming in the door, you will encounter less stress than perhaps someone else.
Well,
Um,
sure, because your skill level on those things of communication, of teamwork, time management, all of those skills have been honed so that you come in, you're ready to go. You are ready to just run with it.
yes, and that's what you hear more and more
Yes.
and more.
Yeah.
I need somebody to hit the ground running
Yeah,
because,
exactly. Right.
folks don't
Yes.
have the
There's no
time
time
these
to train anyone in this.
which is why
Yes.
cultivating a growth
Yes.
mindset comes into play and is so vital. This, I'm telling you, you have just provided us with information, I dare say training, that we can take to the bank if we employ, engage, and become serious about growing ourselves, about growing our
Yeah.
minds, about growing our emotions. Um, this has been more wonderful than I knew I was going to get. I am
Well,
just
I've had
so
it's
pleased.
been a wonderful conversation to, just chat on this topic with
Yes.
you. And I've had a great time.
It's been great. So I like to ask if there are any parting words you'd like to leave with the audience. Tell me this. What are now I know you gave us some steps for the growth
Yes.
mindset,
Yes.
but give me three things a person can get off this live and begin to change their lives between their ears first, and the rest will happen.
hmm Well, the one thing that I would say that will take you from that fixed mindset to the growth mindset, three things: be open, be curious, and be a risk taker.
Mmm. Mmm. That's great. That is fantastic. Well, folks, this live isn't called Karren's Carrots for nothing. Okay? We deliver carrots set in gemstones. Okay? Let's let everyone know how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, so my website is in the comments, so it's
Okay.
mypositivecoaching.com. I am on Facebook, My Positive Coaching, Instagram, My Positive Coaching. I'm on LinkedIn as Wendy Vance. So please, I would love to connect with you. And I always welcome meeting new people and sharing. Like I love your word, sharing my carrots with others.
That's wonderful. I thank you so much. And as you all know, you can reach me at easinthec-suite.com, or you can send me an email, info at KarrenEHenderson.com. And of course, you know by now that's Karren with two R's. As a professor once said to me, double R, that's Rolls Royce, and I'll
Uh,
take it. It
yeah,
goes with the it goes with the
it
carrots, right?
does. It does.
Also, when you visit my website, you'll see that we have a sale going on. There are t-shirts, ebooks, and even a free ebook. And I invite you to go to easinthec-suite.com and just click on chat and pick up a thing or two. That'll be fine. And so that brings it into tonight's session. Once again, I thank you. And this isn't the end for us. I know you know that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karren.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. Have a good rest of evening.
I will.
Thank you
too.
all, folks. Judith is here. I have to give
bye.
Judith credit for our introduction.
Yes.
I appreciate that. And Zakia, I appreciate you as well. And I thank all the others that I may be overlooking for joining us tonight.
Okay.
So,
have a great night, everybody. And thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Take care.
Take care.